So surprisingly, I've been playing a lot of Freyna lately. I didn't really enjoy her very heavily in the beta, but upon the full release, I finally decided to give her a fair shot, and honestly, I've been having a blast. She's a Descendant who can do some pretty insane damage over time while also having some solid AoE clear, and can tank a ton of damage if you build correctly, and of course, one of the hottest Descendants in all of the game. She has some really satisfying abilities, a very fun playstyle, and generally just a really awesome Descendant that I think a lot of players should be playing. I spent the last couple of days building her. Let me show you the build that I put together for her. So starting things off, let's quickly go over her skills because her skills are a little bit different from what I remember in the beta, and they have changed a little bit, so let's go over them really quickly. So the first thing to understand about Freyna is she is not necessarily trying to specifically hit the target with her abilities. She generally wants the AoE of her abilities to hit the main target if possible. Now this can be a little hard to do when you're facing off against Void Intercept bosses, so that's not always something you can accomplish, but generally speaking, when you're playing Freyna, that's generally the focus. It's a little weird and a little hard to get used to at first initially, but once you actually get used to it, you actually start seeing some really good damage numbers. So our first ability is Venom Trauma. What this does is it will put like an AoE dot on an enemy. You can shoot it directly at them, or you can kind of just shoot it at the ground. I do a little bit of both. This will put a dot on enemies and continuously do damage over time. What you typically want to do is put it on the weakest target, and then you want to blow it up because again, she does a lot of her damage by just exploding all over the enemy. So that's what it does. Our next ability is Defense Mechanism. This gives a ton of defense. This will also inflict trauma on them, which again will put a dot on them, dealing more damage. She is very skill focused, you'll notice, but this gives you a ton of defense, 25%, which is pretty sizable, and we have a good duration on it, so it's really nice. Next ability we have is Putrid Venom, and it has a very similar feel to her first ability, but they're actually pretty different. This one will basically put a swamp on the ground, and when enemies step on it, it will track on them, and then whenever they move around, the venom kind of spreads, and you kind of get a feel of what she is. She's this toxic, contagious type of Descendant that will spread poison and venom all over the battlefield. It's actually a really cool playstyle. Finally, we have Venom Baptism, and this is very similar to all her other abilities. You will pull out a weapon that does scale off of your skill power, and you will basically shoot essentially venom at them, and this will pretty much spread to them. If you kill with this, it will be functionally about the same as your first ability, spreading around the poison and stuff. So her kit is very synergistic. It's simple, but it's very synergistic. Now I wanted to save her passive for later because it made a little more sense to talk about it this way. And what this do is whenever you put poison on enemies, when you're nearby, you will basically get more toxic power increase, and it increases up to 15, and you can get quite a bit of toxic damage. And the reason why I wanted to save this last was because I wanted you to take a look at her stats. You want to be really close to enemies because you get that extra bonus. I actually tend to build very heavy in defense on her because I want her to stay alive and not die. As you can see, we have 38,000 defense, and then whenever we press our Venom Mechanism, we get 41k. This is a ton of defense. I may be a little overboard on it, but I think this is a very good amount of defense. If you don't want to put this much, I would probably stop at 30k defense. That's where I would be the 100% stopping point, but I really value defense, so this is how high I go. And then I have about 10k HP, and this is very important. We want to stay really close to the enemy so we can get the bonuses of her passive, and so that's why I have so much defense on her, because I do want her to stay strong and stay alive while getting those benefits to really increase her skill power damage. Quickly going over our weapon, we're using my Tamer build. If you guys don't know, I use multiple Tamers now. I have 4 Tamers. Actually I have 5. I'm rolling on one of them, but I have one for each element, so obviously I can just swap between them whenever I'm facing against different bosses to get a better benefit. I'll quickly go over that because this is always an updating build. We have Rifling Reinforcement, Mental Focus, Big Damage, Weak Point Sight, Adventurer, Better Insight, Weak Point Quickfire, Weak Point Detection, and Action and Reaction. We're starting to build into crit with this weapon because I do think it'll scale better as a hybrid crit weak point weapon, but we're kind of testing it, so keep that in mind. And when I'm playing with Freyna specifically, I like to put Toxic Conductor in here because it gives a lot of extra damage. Having poison on your weapon is actually really big for her because she can trigger her poison effects when you apply poison, so just keep that in mind. So really big to have things like Toxic Conductor built into her kit. It's really good. For our other weapon, we're using Fallen Hope. This one is fairly new. We're still building on it. I haven't really put too much into it. As you can see, we have Toxic Conductor, we have Better Insight, we we have better concentration, rifling reinforcement, and then we have action and reaction. I don't have the like energy activator for it, but when you're using this build specifically, you're using this for mobbing. For bossing, you're going to be using this weapon. So just keep in mind that's how it's going to be set up for these two specific things. But generally speaking, you want Python for the bosses. I think that would be better. You want Fallen Hope for mobbing if you don't want to use the Tamer, of course. So that's just the setup for our weapons, but Fallen Hope has some really good synergy with mobbing, and we'll quickly go over it. First off, its stats are not bad. It has some decent crit. I believe it's base 12%, which is okay crit weapon. You can go very heavy into crit and still get a good amount of value out of it. It's not the best, but pretty good. And the unique ability is pretty synergistic to her kit, and this is why we use it for mobbing. When you shoot an enemy that is poisoned, it's going to increase your firearm attack, and it will do basically a debuff, or I don't know, I guess it's a buff or a debuff. And whenever they die, they're gonna do like poison on like in an AoE. It's like super synergy with her. It gives you a ton of damage. It's really beneficial if you use this when you're doing a mobbing build. Now that we're done with that, let's quickly go over our reactors and external components. And what we have is the toxic mechanic reactor. And the reason why this build actually took so long was because we didn't actually have this available for a what's this weapon called again? The Fallen Hope. This reactor was not available for general round, so that's why it took me a little long to get this video out. It actually refreshed like a day ago or 2 days ago, depending on when I released this video. So I finally got one after I was able to farm for a couple of hours, and we got a Fallen Hope toxic reactor with toxic skill power and tech skill power, which is two things that she scale off of, primarily toxic, but a combination of both. And then we got a toxic skill power boost ratio and some skill crit hit rate. I don't typically build into crit, but eventually once you get enough like investment in her, you will eventually be able to actually build into crit on her abilities. I will see my build in a second. I don't typically build into crit yet because I don't think it's effective, but yeah, that's the reactor. It's really good. You can easily farm this right now. If you're trying to figure out where to farm it as of releasing this video within the first week, you can go to the ruins right here in this area. In the Vespers is a area full of this, and you can farm it pretty easy. I would say pretty easy, but these are some of the worst missions I've ever seen in a game, and they took forever. But if you want to farm this is where you can get it. Going back to our components, we use the Venom Essence set. You can get this from the Swamp Walker, one of the easiest bosses to face in the entire game, so you should go ahead and do that. Unfortunately, the main stats on this is max shield. I think shield is terrible because it doesn't really take your defense into account, but the other stats are good, so let's go over it. First off, we got fire resistance and max HP. Those are really valuable stats because we don't want her to die. We also have chill resistance and MP recovery in combat. This has been really helpful for me to stay topped up on using like skills and stuff because she uses a lot of skills. She is essentially a caster to some degree, so having some extra mana actually helped me quite a bit. I would like a better one, but this is what I'm using for now. Next, we have for the memory, we have a MP recovery modifier, once again with some defense, heavy defense, because I don't want her dying. So this is a really good synergy. You can use other things, but this is what I use. And then finally, for the processor, we unfortunately got a legendary or ultimate roll on the max shields with some toxin resistant. Obviously, we want toxin resistant, and this is the best we got, but you know, it is what it is. It's still good, and we're going to be swapping this out later, but this is going to be a goal for you guys to like push towards, maybe get like quad resistance on these, and then like some useful stat like HP defense or something like that to keep you alive. What this actually does is it gives you toxic power for the 2 set, and then whenever you have 4 pieces, whenever you use a tactical rifle or assault rifle, you know, like something like the Fallen Hope, for example, for every opponent who has like poison stacks afflicted upon them, you have a chance at 30% to get 2% extra attack power as well as more skill power. So this is like super synergy to it because you're going to be stacking poison near consistently. Obviously, this is not going to be as valuable when you're facing off against bosses because they don't have a lot of like ads, but for mobbing, like you get so much skill power, you just blow up the whole screen. That is pretty much it for the components. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section. We're going to be building the Python for the completed or like the perfected build that I will drop in like maybe a week from now. But yeah, let's move on to the actual Descendant and her like mods. So in the previous video where I talked about Ajax, which by the way is coming in the next 2 days, the perfected build, I only did one thing where it was just a general build, but for the future I'm going to be doing mobbing and a bossing build, so you guys have a little bit more versatility. So let's quickly go over the mobbing build first, and starting off with the most important piece of the mobbing build, this is contagion. What this does is it does a huge cloud of poison whenever you kill anything, and it makes it so damn easy to kill things. This is absolutely mandatory if you're playing any form of like mobbing, you're fighting against multiple enemies. At no time should you not have this. It's super easy to farm. You just farm the hard mode Dead Bride, like one of the easiest bosses to kill in the game. You have access to this. I got it in like 3 pulls of her. So yeah, go for it. Definitely get this. It's super big. We're using kicking. You can use whatever you want here. I just like to kick because it just looks good. We're using increased HP because we want to stay alive. We want to get about 10k HP because that's really all we need to stay alive. We also have skill extension because we want the duration of the poison to continue to tick on things. Plus we have like things that give us like the defense and mechanism ability. So you know, this helps with keeping that up, and you only have like a 4-second downtime on your defense boost. So it's actually really good to have this super synergy. We have nimble fingers because we want cooldowns to be low. She is a caster, and casting is like something really big for her because she gets a lot of damage from it. And then we have increased defense because again, I want her to stay alive. You can easily do this by getting defense and HP, something players really should invest in. For our damage abilities, we're using focus on tech and then focus on toxic. These are going to give you a ton of skill power for those specific things, which you do both of. Your abilities scale off of both of these things, so it's really important that you get these, and then you're going to get a lot of skill cooldown. This is about what, 12.2%, so a lot of extra skill cooldown. This is what I would put, and these are ideal. Keep in mind I only hit her with 1 crystallization catalyst, so you know, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement if you want to really take her to the next level. But yeah, this is 1 crystallization catalyst and 1 energy activator, and she's pretty damn strong right now. Hard to kill, lots of damage, really good. For the bossing build on the other hand, we don't really have any of the like transcendent mods that are really good for her. So basically we just drop the contagion because we don't really need it as much. You can still use it depending on the boss that you face off against, but most of them don't really have a ton of mobs. But we're using pretty much the same setup. The only difference is we slotted in more HP because again, we want to stay alive a little bit, and this is like really nice for staying alive because you know, dying is not good. We use agony. You don't have to use agony, you can use other things. I'm still short of like I think 4 levels, so there's still more HP to come for her, by the way. But yeah, with this setup, you're pretty tanky, you have a lot of defense, you do really good damage, your cooldowns are really nice. It's a really solid build. I know some people like to build into the crit stuff. Yeah, there's skill crit, skill concentration, as well as skill insight. I will be eventually building into these. I don't know if I want to put it on her because her crit is very, I think the most you'll get out of her abilities is like 10% crit. I think that's way too low to justify 2 slots. I think that's way too little damage. You can go that way if you feel like that's better, but for me, I rather just focus on like raw damage, like things like this that gives me actual raw damage, build some survivability, build some efficiency, and then just keep casting and dealing damage. But this isn't a bad option, but I don't like it, so just my personal opinion on that. And there you have it. That is my S tier Freyna build. This is a very fun build. I've been having a good time playing. I didn't really like Freyna in the beta because it just, I don't know, she felt a little gimmicky, but with the way that her explosions work, some of her mods work, she feels like really fun character to play. And I can see myself like really maximizing her. She's a really cool character, plus she's hot, of course. Anyway, if you like videos like this, consider leaving me a like as well as subscribing to the channel. I am going to be covering the first Descendant for a very long time. For those of you who are very interested in the Ajax video, keep in mind that will be out in about 2 or so days. I do need to perfect it, and to perfect it takes quite a bit, so that'll be out. And of course, don't forget to come check out the Twitch. I literally live stream every single day for about 10 hours a day, so feel free to come check out the stream, ask some questions, and hang out and chat. And just like that, guys, I'll see you in the first Descendant video very soon.